Good.
Okay.
He's the greatest guy.
I've known that guy since from Florida.
Good, how are you?
You call me when you want.
They had some other very specific.
Right.
You were previous to that.
Friends who couldn't get home this week.
The whole village.
Today.
Glasgow, they go to
Only 4 years old.
But since bracket sold it, changed it all. He says that went to Mark Conley with that. I run into Glasgow, they went up there and kept those there. Because my wife works next to from bracket ran and got in. People was congratulating her. Tony Brackett. But her husband got in place. That was James. Favorite child over that school.
So, happy?
Received the.
Might happen. Still sick.
Yeah, it's fine.
I have all the. Oh, well. Sick of Daytona? No, I got sick when I got home.
Well, I think.
I was really sick of the fire. Had to sit down a couple of times. What the hell am I doing?
From Dave Story and. Boy, the pot is boiling. Bobby can just get thrown on the bus and get thrown under half.
Yeah.
Load go through.
I gave it to him to take care of.
No, it was
How old is that drawing, Paul? How old is that drawing on the table?
1970s.
When?
1970s.
Oh, okay. Not as old as I expected.
We're solving a road program for John, problem for John Wendell.
Involved, they were on paying that back.
Is it gonna get solved?
Yeah. About 10
When we've been doing this?
This one will.
Oh my God.
This one will.
Yep, it is.
Since I'm the judge was here.
I already turned it on.
Okay. Wait, Eddie.
Okay, I think it's close enough to 7 o'clock, March 5th. I'll bring the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order with a roll call, starting from my right.
Justin
Rocky, Vaughn Morgan.
Jim Rolls, Chip Hussey.
And we have a quorum, and the meeting is recorded.
Yes.
Okay. There are no public hearings. The first thing we have on the agenda is an appointment. Oh, I guess we want to do this first, is that right? You're willing to wait, okay. So let's move on to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a problem on Great Bay East as it connects into the Bay Ridge subdivision. John Wendell and his wife Tina Wendell have owned a property right at that particular junction, which is shown on this original subdivision plan. In this location right here, that's the terminus of Great Bay East. And then it comes around and makes a corner and comes over and connects into Bay Ridge Road right at that location. In 2015, in an effort to try to correct the ownership and make sure that this was a public road, the Wendells conveyed this strip of land that is shown on the plan here and here into town ownership. The difficulty with that is that when they did so, back when the planning board approved this, the road was included in the 60,000 square feet of their legal lot. And so when they conveyed that land out to the ownership of the town, they made their lot into a non-conforming lot. And now that property is for sale, and the title search correctly determined that this is a non-conforming lot. So what we're trying to do is to correct this issue. And the way that we would do that is the town would convey the strip back to the Wendells, and then the Wendells would provide the town with an easement over the surface of the property. There, in that way, they would retain ownership of the 60,000 square feet needed to maintain their legal lot. The town would obtain what it needs for transportation purposes over the surface of the roadway. So that's our proposal. We can do this in this particular location because this is a little bit different from Great Bay West and other parts of Great Bay East. The reason that it's different is because of that subdivision plan. This is a road that has already been dedicated by being laid out on this particular subdivision plan, approved by the planning board in the past. And so therefore it's not the same as situations where the planning board has not previously approved that particular location. So what we would be looking to do is the following. The town would convey its interest back to the Wendells, thereby restoring them to a legal lot configuration. The Wendells would then convey to the town the easement rights that are necessary for us to have the transportation easement over the surface. And the reason that the planning board is here is because at that point, what we can now do jointly with our two boards together is declare this to be an accepted public road and put this particular segment to rest once and for all as a public way. And so with that particular explanation, I would move that this board, the Board of Selectmen, convey the necessary property that had been conveyed to us from the Wendells back to them to restore their ownership of that 60,000 square feet as a legal lot, accept the deed from the Wendells of the easement interests over the surface that would give us the transportation rights that we need, and then finally, with the consent of the planning board, finally accept this as a public way in that location and put the question of ownership and public way to rest for this particular segment.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it?
I'm wondering the procedural thing, where we own the right now we own the property, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't it follow the same thing as if we go to sell a piece of property, we have to go through the,
RSA 4114A.
The reason I'm thinking not here is because this really was an error back in 2015, and what we're trying to do is essentially end up with the same thing that we had back in 2015. It's also something where if we don't do this expeditiously, we're causing substantial damage to a citizen. And we're doing this really to avoid the potential of litigation and the potential of damage to that particular citizen. So I'm prepared to go forward and do it. Because what it does is it goes forward and accomplishes something that the planning board had actually approved way back in the 1970s. So I don't think that we really need to go through 4114 and go through that long convoluted process in order to correct what seems to be an error and something that really does substantial justice and meets the intent of what the planning board had approved all those many years ago.
And I agree with that too. And Rich Windsor was the vice chairman of the planning board.
Yeah, so just for clarification, this was originally approved by the planning board when?
76.
76.
Yeah.
And in 1976, was it approved by the planning board as a public way or a private way?
It was approved in its current location. Back then, it was called a private way.
Okay.
But certainly it was dedicated to public use and it has been used for public use during all that period of time.
So just as clarification, a private way versus a public way has a very different standard to it.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And so, similar to what's gone on here at Bramber Valley, that has been approved as a private way.
Mm-hmm.
Now that road does not meet the same standards as a public way by definition of our own zone.
That's true.
And so this is similar, so that, just to be clear, that the planning board, and I'm speaking for them in 1976, and clearly I wasn't part of it then, but in 1976, they approved this predicated on a private way. They didn't approve this predicated on this is a public road that the public will be responsible for maintaining from here into perpetuity. Correct? And so we have to be very cautious of that and how we use that, because we're throwing that around like, yep, the planning board said this was a good road in 1976. It meets all the criteria. Dominus Salus plus you on your way. It was approved as a private way in 1976 at a different standard than it would have been if it was a public road.
That's true.
And every year, I believe every year since I've been on the board, we have had, during our meetings every single year, we have said that that road is a private road, it's not a public road. We are clearing it and plowing it for emergency purposes only, right?
Correct. That started around 2005, that we started actually saying that.
Yes.
So in effect, you're creating an
Would you,
easement, Your Honor.
thank you.
Sorry. I'm not used to doing that.
Also, he's an alternate member of the planning board.
Right.
So you're creating an easement road here?
It would be creating a public way. It would be easement right of way rather than fee-owned right of way.
So didn't we just discuss this a couple of weeks ago or a month ago about easement roads not having the same rights for ambulances and fire trucks and things like that?
Not on the surface. There are different subsurface rights that are involved here. This particular segment, very short, connecting between Bay Ridge Road, which is in fact a fully accepted public way, and Great Bay East, which has its own particular issues. This is one where we could definitely go back and we could go through all of the different discussions that we had with Great Bay West. The difference between West, East, and here is that this is one that shows on a plan that was approved by the planning board way back in 1976. That gives us much more authority to go forward and resolve the matter in favor of calling it a public road.
Anybody else have any?
Dan Moore from the planning board. Just the question is, why is the town maintaining a private road? When other towns, other roads that are private in town aren't maintained.
We had been doing it at a lesser standard called emergency lane. We've used the statute 23159A,
Right.
which allows us to maintain it to a minimal level for the purpose of emergency access.
Right.
And so that's the standard that we've been using.
But you can apply that to lots of private roads in town that are.
And I think part of these was, it was being done for many years before it was brought to the attention that it shouldn't be done.
Right.
So it was continuing an accepted practice before the town forefathers at that time realized they weren't supposed to be doing it.
That's absolutely correct.
Right. But at a cost to the town, not at a cost to the real owners of the road, because it's a private road, right?
Yes, and the real owners of the road, that's a really good question. There are many folks that have lived along the edge of Great Bay East and Great Bay West for all these years. And they have been treated, as though that were a public road for the purpose of maintaining emergency access, for the purpose of allowing a school bus to go down it. There was a time when it didn't, but the school bus has in fact gone down this particular area and onto Great Bay East, not onto West, but onto Great Bay East, I think now for at least 10 to 12 years. I'm trying,
5 or so.
when was it that Wayne got the cruiser mired?
I don't remember that.
This area right here, there was a period of time when it wasn't maintained very well, and our police officers succeeded in burying our police cruiser in a pothole in that area, to the point where I think our fire chief pulled him out.
Most likely.
Most likely. That was some years ago, and at that point, this particular connector area was substantially repaired and maintained for public emergency access.
Any other?
Well, just a point of information, and I don't know how much bearing it has on, but that, before it was hot topped and sold off and everything, there was a road going through there that was open to the public. I remember as a kid
driving with my father along through there when it was just a one-lane dirt road.
Right, before Bay Ridge was developed.
Right.
Probably true, and that was when all the structures in that area were camps.
John McDevitt, Planning Board. If we accept this transportation easement, this is only going to apply to that section of the road that abuts Mr. Wendel's property, correct?
That's correct.
It has no bearing on any further discussion regarding Great Bay Drive east or west?
That's correct.
How about the deeds that have been given to the town by the property owners along the, this will have no effect on that?
It would have no effect on that, because we're only declaring it with regard to this particular segment.
Right, the meets and bounds are clearly spelled out in the easement and the deed.
Okay, so I still have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further, anybody else like to? Then I will ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So I'm going to turn this meeting,
Not clean.
I guess you guys would like to take a vote on it also, right?
So, now, are we looking to codify or accept Great Bay East and West at this point?
We are not.
Okay,
The only segment that is under consideration is the property that directly
The
abuts
triangle around the Blue Heron property.
the Wendell property, as shown on this recorded subdivision plan.
now, was this subject to the same warrant article of 2015?
Yes, 2010, yes.
2010, is that one? I don't know.
Yeah.
So 2010 warrant article, so what does it subject us to if we are to proceed and start to accept small portions of the road as opposed to looking at this in totality?
Well, I think all it does here is take this particular connector from Bay Ridge over to the edge of the Wendell property and makes that clearly a public way. That's all that this does. It does not affect anything else with regard to east and west.
Certainly set precedent.
Yeah, what the Board of Selectmen has done and has maintained is the finding that east and west need to be maintained for emergency purposes under 23159A as emergency lane. So I don't think that this particular action will have any impact on what you see on the face of the earth.
So I'd open that to the board, to the planning board for discussion with regard to accepting, how are we codifying this one piece? Do we have bounds or anything like that that we can reference here?
Yes, and it's described exactly as you will see on the subdivision plan. We have, the town administrator has created a deed which uses the meets and bounds description of that property exactly.
And your motion can reference the deed from Dr. and Mrs. Wendell to the town.
Except a portion of the road in the deeded section from,
It's, they deeded, it was deeded to us on May 21st, 2013, 5440, page 2197.
Right.
this is where?
It's far right
I
corner.
have a question while he's looking. So
And then they're way down by, yeah, right there.
here, if we install,
This is, yeah, this corner right here.
Right, so this is the deed, right?
All he deeded to us was this strip, just like that. And that's all we would be deeding back.
Okay, so this piece of private way, this is defined private way that's here on the corner of their property?
That's it.
Yeah, and it's not loosely defined, it's all
Yeah.
spelled out by meets and bounds in the deed.
So that's Bay Ridge. You guys, I think we should probably take a look.
yeah, my question is, if we accept it as a public way, is it staying as the drawing states, it'll still be a private way maintained by the town?
No, it'll be a
Or will the
public
language
way.
change?
It'll be a public way maintained by the town.
And we can't accept it as a private way as it is on the plan, maintained by the town?
The planning board can make whichever motion they prefer.
Okay. The reason we would not want the motion to read that way from the planning board is because it is our intent that this in fact be dedicated to public use and become a public way, not the same as a private way. If it were a private way, then the individual who purchased this home from Wendell's would be able to close it off to public use. And that's not what we would like to see in this particular situation, because of the fact that it interconnects two neighborhoods and is very necessary for emergency services purposes.
So how does this then, if it's changed to a public way, I mean, how does it force the town into not increasing the standards of the road to
Because there is a statute, RSA 231.3, that says the town can maintain a public way to whatever standard it chooses.
Right.
We don't have to pave it to certain widths, we don't have to pave it to certain standards.
Don't have to pave it at all, right?
Right.
So would you classify it as a class 5 road?
It would be class 5 for that segment, yes.
Which would be normal. Right. Yes, which would be normal.
This is a pretty abnormal situation, no question about it. But what we're trying to do is maintain the interconnected nature of two neighborhoods and resolve a problem for a citizen to make his house marketable again.
So with reference to this, as we look at Great Bay East and Great Bay West at this point, and we have other challenges there as well, how do we ensure that we don't set precedent here for that?
The very great difference between those areas and this area was approved on a recorded subdivision plan.
Okay.
Great Bay East and Great Bay West have never shown on a recorded subdivision plan.
Gotcha. Okay. Any comment from the board?
Just, I want to maybe before the vote,
Yeah.
you have 3 alternates here, you have to make a choice. Who you gonna bring on for the vote?
Can I go through?
I don't think you can.
You have the ability to have 7 votes on your planning board.
Okay,
And it can be made up of regular members or alternates.
so you gotta bring them on.
They're on.
You can sit out if you want, Steve.
For the record.
We have to do a roll call?
Probably should, since you have
Yeah.
introduced Mike.
So we'll start with the roll call.
James Conley, alternate.
Rich Windsor,
Dave Moore?
Stephen Gerardo, alternate.
Katie Maderas, alternate.
John Dutton.
sorry, this is new to us, so. Any comment from the board on this, John?
No, that's answered my questions. As long as this isn't going to be going into the other issues of Great Bay Drive East and West, and because it was a recorded plan, I think I'm all set with it.
Kate?
I think it's in the best interest of the town and the citizen.
Steve?
I agree, I think it's in the best interest to get this thing settled now.
Same, okay.
Yeah, my issue was the precedence. Are we setting
Yeah.
precedence in this answer?
I'd welcome a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept it as stated.
I'll second.
Okay, maybe we can refine
As
it a little
stated.
bit. I'd request that the motion. Perhaps we could
Refine it a little bit?
refine that to
Accept the
state.
property deeded to the town by Mr. Wendell at book and page,
At book and page,
returning that to
Expect
them
us to remember
and
that.
accepting a perpetual transportation easement over the same property.
yeah, I think we're accepting the public way is what we're accepting.
That's right.
You guys are,
As a public way
We're
and
accepting
accepting
the
a
public way.
perpetual easement over the same property.
would you be amenable to those?
Yes, that sounds good, just what I was gonna say.
All right, any other comment? Or, I'd open
Second
it.
it.
All
I
right.
already have a second.
Yeah, good.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Oh, so that's done.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoroughness.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
The citizen thanks you who lives there.
The citizen who's in hopefully none.
You want me to take those two notes so I can get them straight out?
I'm not going anywhere.
You can.
Uh,
Oh, you don't want to drink one of the other?
I need to.
Are there any other?
I'm pretty, I'll just take this Second from the chief.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, you guys know what actually we are?
And the chief's coming out with David.
Good ass. Yeah. Done. Okay, let's go back up under appointments. We have Chief Crester with us who will brief us on the fire we had in town. All over the paper and the news last weekend.
First off, 90% of the hazard's been cleaned up at the site. The waste oil's gone, the gasoline has been pumped away. The stream has been cleaned down. The gas has been there daily, so that's all been cleaned up. On the other hand, we have lots of damaged fire gear throughout the seacoast here, Greenland, Northampton, Kittery, Newcastle, Newmarket. So we got a bunch of fire gear that we're submitting to the insurance company for replacement fire gear and fire hose. So we're putting in, I got lots of different costs from each town. We, as the town of Greenland, we got $21,324 worth of gear that we're going to be putting in for reimbursement. The town of Northampton has got $5,316.74 worth of gear. That's between hose and fire gear. And town of Kittery, I'm still collecting paperwork because we got to do this within 30 days. The town of Kittery has got 19,000. Yeah, where am I? $20,275.14. And that's so far. Newmarket, I haven't got their prices in yet. And Newcastle, I haven't got their gear prices in. So I'm trying to put a whole packet together. I did talk to the insurance company of the property, and they're willing to take this and look at it. There is a statute stating that they have to reimburse us for the gear with the waste oil and what we went through with gasoline and all that. So we're working on getting some replacement gear that we did lose that's got stains in it that we can't get out. So at this point, I haven't ordered any gear for the town yet. I don't know how far you want me to wait on this. Us as a town through Primex has only got $1,000 worth of coverage. So we're not, and then I also asked the administrator to check to see if we can get more coverage. You go into Maine and they're fully covered, but that's just a different insurance company. I guess just a problem on the Primex stating that that's as much as they will cover us. So.
No, she's not here. Well, first of all, I'd like to express our appreciation for what you and your guys did at the fire the other day. That was
it wasn't just us; it was the whole
well,
seacoast.
the whole thing. But,
yeah, everybody worked together and we got it done.
You guys too out there.
Yep. The fire was way ahead of us before we got there.
Yeah. Okay. Now, it's my understanding, I guess, that we are going to get by law. We'll get
Yes, and let's help the citizens in the paper here. There's a statute, RSA 154-8-A, and we'll give you a copy so you can have it. Liability concerning hazardous materials accidents, and because this was a hazardous material release, that means that the owner of the property, the one responsible, is responsible to reimburse the fire department for whatever it loses in the process. That's probably why the Primex coverage is so low, because they understand the value of that statute as well. And so they'll be looking to the insurance company of the owner of the building who was responsible for the release of the hazardous material,
So you think it'll be the owner or the tenant, one of the two?
one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, at this point, we're just trying to get our money back. This takes about 8 weeks to get this gear, and I'd rather our people weren't running around in the gear that they're wearing now. If we have some spots on some of the stuff that won't come out. It is oil, and some of it's worse, so, you know, I don't know how far we wanna go down the road, or we order it. I don't really wanna take it out of my budget, until we get our check from them, and I really don't wanna wait too long either.
Yeah, it sounds though from what you're saying is it does affect the readiness of the department.
Right.
So, for that reason, I personally would be happy to authorize you to order those replacements now, and we'll find a way to cover it within town funds.
I have replaced the hose already, cause I had to. That got done right away. Matter of fact, it was kind of a rush order. But
Well, I agree also. I think, we've got some safety personnel here who are unequipped right now. I think it's imperative that we get them back operational.
Yes.
Safety to me trumps everything, so. So, does anybody have any?
We have a capital reserve account for replacement of town equipment. Will that get reimbursed when the insurance check comes in? Or does it go to general fund?
Well, the hard part is not getting it out of capital reserve, it's putting it back in.
That's what I was questioning.
Yeah, and so,
can I go through the budget for right now and get reimbursed, but that's supposed to go through the general fund also, is that correct?
well, in other words, if we authorize you to do this, it would be a general fund obligation of the town.
Okay.
And so, once the insurance reimbursement came back in, we would accept that back into the general fund and restore your budget.
Okay.
So, because we're early on in our fiscal year, I think we have plenty of room to get that done.
Oh, yeah, I just wanna make sure at the end of the year that I don't get the money back and I'm gonna have huge problems, so.
We can move this along.
Okay, so, yeah.
I'm gonna move the authorized replacement gear and hose that were damaged at the fire Saturday, February 24th.
Second. Have a motion, a second, any further discussion?
The only question is to what amount not to exceed? And an amount not to exceed, what is it appropriate?
Not to exceed $25,000.
Okay. Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay.
That'll do it?
Yes.
All right. I have a motion, a
With that,
second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Any other questions of me?
But that's all you added here.
I think we have no more use for you, Will.
No more use of me? Thanks, Irene.
For the present time.
Yeah, for a moment. Thank you.
See you later.
Hey, Chester.
You seconded that one?
I did.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to do two things.
President, and while you were out, the one thing we said was, we chose not to use the capital reserve fund, because it's not hard to get it out, but it's hard to get it back in.
And to me, it was a little bit iffy whether it qualified, because it talked about equipment as shown in the capital improvement plan, and that equipment isn't expensive enough that it's ever booked in the capital improvement plan.
Right.
Individually.
Okay, approval of minutes from February 19th. Does anybody have any comments or amendments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes for Monday, February 19th, 2018, as written.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, under old business, we have a Coakley update.
Okay, I have a couple of things on the Coakley update. I'm just verifying the date on this. April 6th at 6 p.m. is tentatively set at the Bethany Church for the next public meeting regarding the Coakley landfill. The EPA, DES, and the Coakley group will be present. We received, got notification from the city of Portsmouth that the grant the grant that we've been approved for through the state for the $200,000 for the engineering for the water line on Breakfast Hill Road as a preventative measure for the Coakley has been all completed, and it's in front of Governor and Council for approval now. So as soon as that is signed, the check will be forthcoming to the city of Portsmouth.
Okay. Does that look like it's gonna fly?
The 200,000 is,
Oh, 200,000.
It's done.
Oh, yeah,
that's already,
I mean, I don't know why that
Right.
would not be approved by the
Right.
executive council, because that's money that's MTV money, that's another, it's not coming out of the state.
Okay, good.
I can give you a little more.
Go ahead.
And that is, as you may remember, Representative Minister's bill that called for testing fish coming out of there, in fact failed. However, EPA has what's a draft quality, what is it, quality assurance, QAPP, whatever that stands for.
right. And has asked CLG to do fish testing samples and gave them some parameters to do the fish testing.
Yeah, and I can tell you at Fish and Game, we're working directly with them. And there will very soon be an administrative rule proposed that makes Ferry Brook a catch and release location, so that no one will be consuming fish out of there any longer.
Are you still going to stock it?
Yes. And what they're doing is they're going to mark the fish that are stocked, so that that's part of the testing, that they'll be able to know when they catch a marked fish that that was a hatchery fish, and be able to tell that it's not a fish that's been in there for 2 years. That sort of thing. So that's all working together, and that will happen soon.
Good. All right.
I'm just wondering why you're still stocking the fish.
It has to do with the sportsmen and the fact that that's a resource that they would like to use. It's not, the stocking is not always to have fish for consumption, it's fish to be able to be caught.
But isn't it hazardous for the fish
No.
if the chemicals are in the water?
That's why we're doing the testing, to find out whether that in fact is true.
Yeah, no, I understand. It just seems like, why would you put more fish in? I know I'm sounding like a crazy environmentalist, but why would you put more fish in harm's way, I guess? A potential harm's way.
Hopefully they get to the ocean quick.
They're the canary.
Actually, if they go,
They're
they're going
already in
in
there.
clean, you'll see how fast they're absorbing the chemical.
May I ask, is this a direct outlet into the ocean waters, or is it a?
Derek?
Eventually.
Yeah, it goes into the marsh there,
Yes.
little harbor eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Brackett Road and Rye. Berry Brook.
You'll get there. Whether they will.
But we do have some avid anglers around here, so maybe none will get by.
But they're gonna put them back, they gotta keep putting them back.
Any other comments about Coakley? Okay, appointment of treasurer.
Okay, we've now received 2 applications. I forwarded you the second one earlier today. So we have 2 applicants. One is Mark Racky. They're both Greenland residents. One is Mark Racky, who is very well qualified. He's a CPA and accountant. He's been working for Lonza, recently retired. The other is Sandra Troll Smith, who is the former town treasurer prior to Mr. Ralston. And she was town treasurer for about 10 years. And after that, she worked for One Sky Health Services, One Sky Services, as one of their accountants and accounts receivable people.
Any comments?
Time is of the essence.
Okay. I know that Mark also, he was on the budget committee here in town also. And, yeah, I know he was a stickler on the budget committee. And the guy who crosses his T's and Mark, dots his I's. As far as the other one is concerned, I really don't know too much about her, but I know that she was a treasurer here once before.
And Jim knows that she was a stickler.
Yeah. So,
Well, I move that we appoint Mark Brackey as town treasurer. I think he's got a very impressive background and probably overqualified, but he's retired and he wants something to keep him busy. I think he would be the best choice.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mark Brackey it is.
And when will that appointment take effect?
After the voting,
On the 13th?
on the 13th, because her term expires that day. But Tina, has agreed to work with whomever is appointed to get them trained and have a smooth transition.
Okay. So the idea of this appointment is to start probably March 14th?
As the treasurer, but the transition will start now.
Yes, but I'm just trying to get a date when that appointment would actually begin.
Yeah, because in the weeks, or the week prior, they'll be going to the bank, they have to change signature cards, things like that.
Sure.
There's paperwork that'll need to be done. The position was posted at 5,000 or 7,000 based on the state, doing the state deposit for the town clerk. Is that still what the board wants to maintain?
I would say so, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Wright, you would need to be sworn in, is that right? Okay.
Well, it's an appointed position, it's not elected, there is no oath to take.
All right, appointed personnel are all sworn in as well here. We swear in the police officers,
Well, I can't hurt.
Yeah.
I think just CYA, you know.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll notify him. New business. A review of the town administrator's report, which is none. And we have some abatements to look over.
The first thing is just to re-sign the corrected abatement from last meeting because I had one of the map and lots typed wrong. So that is just re-signing the one that was approved on February 19th. And then the new one is also at Bramber Green for $12 for the correction to a sketch for map U710B.
Okay, motion.
Move to approve the abatement of 12 Sage Lane in the amount of $12. And I guess I jumped the gun here.
You can do them both.
Okay, and I also move to approve the corrected abatement in the amount of $2,594.
I'll second both.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passed. Okay. That's it for abatements, right, Sharon?
Yes. The deadline has now passed for 2017 abatements to be accepted. That deadline was March 1st. We received 3 today in the mail that were all postmarked prior to. And the law does, the rule does, it's an assessing rule, says that postmarked by March 1st. The 3 that we received are 3 of almost the annual ones. We received one from Fairpoint for the telecommunications, which has been ongoing for several years. Donahue, Tucker, and Schindler law firm have been working on a joint defense for this town in that matter. We received one from Lowe's, which we received 2 or 3 years in a row now. It's been denied and never been appealed because they base it on a lot of their other stores and their stores that were closing. And then we received one from ABC Properties, which is the new it's the building that caught on fire last Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So it will be valued much lower for 2018 anyway because the fire was before April 1st. But this is appealing the 2017 valuation.
Okay.
Those arrived today, but they were all postmarked.
They were postmarked, yep. Yeah.
All right.
It's that postmark, I think it's got it.
The machines that you might be able to.
Oh, you can definitely change.
Okay, approval of a temporary storage unit.
Yeah, this is, again, the result of the fire at 437 Portsmouth Ave. The Board of Selectmen are the ones that approve temporary storage units. And this has been approved by the building inspector, and what we'd like to do is have the Board of Selectmen approve this one, and then authorize that the building inspector be authorized to sign all of these minor permits during this reconstruction phase, instead of bringing them all to the board.
Okay.
How many units are gonna be on there?
Technically, there's 3.
Right now, this is for the first 2.
Oh, okay.
But this isn't, this is for the front buildings, but when they start construction of the rear buildings, there may be another one.
Of course, then that depends upon whether they use the same footprint, site review, planning board and all that stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, but I have no problem with up to 3. I just don't wanna see 6, 8.
What about length of time they're gonna be stored?
All right, why don't we just leave it as the normal way, and it's no more than a year, and the next one will come back to the board as well.
Yeah.
All right.
So we still need a motion on that.
Yeah. Somebody you wanna make a motion on?
I move we approve the first temporary storage unit.
This is for 2 40-foot shipping containers.
Yes, no problem, I approve that. I move that we approve that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, and that's just signed by one selectman.
Okay, we have a recognition program here. Jim Ralston.
Right.
Juan, you just need to sign the bottom of this one.
Basically, I wanted to see if we couldn't set up some type of a recognition program for our citizens who do something that merits it. I'm thinking of our latest Eagle Scout. We had the winner of the Greenland School Spelling Bee who represented the town and the state spelling thing. Just a general certificate that could be signed by the chairman of the selectmen, recognizing their thing. Be basically very little cost to the town, but I think it's nice that these kids especially know that they haven't gone unnoticed.
And I can, as the information is given to me, I can draft proclamation citations and have them for the board the following meeting.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
No, sounds good. Good idea.
Like a certificate or something? Yeah, something like that.
Sounds good to me.
Do we need any kind of a motion for that? Or, no, I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Okay. Now that. Well, first of all, anybody have any other new business they like to, or old business or whatever? Anyone?
Not at this time.
Okay.
The one thing I wanted to bring up that the building inspector had given a copy of it to you in your packet is on perambulations. And Paul had actually written it on top of this, also perambulation. He's looking at the boundary of Stratham and Greenland right now, working on a project out there. And so he had talked about finding one of the town bounds, and he said, you know, when was the last time Stratham's bound was perambulated? Well, more than the 10 years that it was supposed to, or 5 years that it was supposed to. So I said, while you're out there, if you want to contact like the public works director or the building inspector out in Stratham, and you guys mark them all off again and say yes, and we can type something up that the board sign, and we'll get that perambulation in the books.
Okay, I thought this was kind of like a blue law.
It is.
It is, and it was up for repeal, but the legislature did not repeal it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But while he's out there in that area, if he wants to, like, he took the map and like.
Okay, good. All right.
It went off the books.
I have one other thing.
Go ahead.
Should we be looking into posting any roads for our season?
It's not something we've ever done in Greenland.
It's not, I know that, and is it something we should, to,
I don't know enough about it.
make the life of the roads last? I don't think it's a great big difference, I think it's 10 to 20% extra life of the roads, but, you know, that's up.
What is it you do?
Road
Post a weight
posting
limit
for heavy limits.
For heavy, for
I know
heavy
Hampton
roads.
Falls does it on tons of the town
Some towns
roads.
do it on all the roads, on a lot of roads, some towns don't do it at all. And
Right.
I just, you can talk to the road agent about this,
Yeah,
because we're doing roads every year, all the time.
well, that's
We
true.
can get an
And
extra year.
the difference between Greenland and some other places is that we have pretty good pavement on things as opposed to towns that have all dirt roads. And when I was doing this at the association, we used to call it Miata season. We'd lose a Miata here and there. But Greenland really doesn't have that. I don't know if there are any roads that we have that are particularly vulnerable to legal weights. And there are places like Ocean Road where we wouldn't be allowed to close them down anyway.
Right.
Because they're national network connectors. We aren't allowed to touch any road. Only town roads. And if we did do that, then we might potentially stop fuel delivery, or we might stop.
Well, no, there's exemptions for that.
Right, yeah.
Fire trucks, fuel
Go
trucks,
through.
et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to post any roads, I'm just bringing it to the board's attention as a question, should we?
Yeah,
should we
and I don't
look
know
into
enough about the hows and whys and,
Well, back in the day, they used to use what they call the screwdriver test. If you try to plunge a screwdriver in the road and it bounces, you're fine, and if it plunges into the hill, then you close it. Just because the road at that point has become so soft that those heavy weights would in fact rut it up.
this? Right, but we're not talking about closing the roads.
Right.
No, I
Post a lot of towns do it March 1st to May 1st, 2 months, you can't run them down certain roads that are,
Yeah.
and just, you know, like the worst roads, not necessarily the weight limit, but the roads that are in the worst condition. I mean, you have the right to keep trucks on, it's the exception of deliveries and stuff like that, just not through the ways.
I don't know of any roads that we have that are terribly at risk, using that sort of basic test. I don't know what others think about your knowledge of the roads, if you think there are any that are particularly at risk.
I can't think of it. I really don't. I'm off in left field on that one. I'm not an engineer, so I wouldn't begin to be able to tell you.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, is we should, some of us, we need to know this, because
Yeah.
most towns do it, the selectmen do it.
Yeah,
So maybe we could bring the road agent and he could help us out.
yeah.
Yeah.
We can look into it.
If we looked at the Underwood report and if they had noted any particular vulnerabilities, we could check that out.
Yeah. Okay,
That's it, thank
anything
you.
else? Anything from the audience? Okay.
I just have a question. I heard what you just said, Chester, and I think your idea is good, but I guess the next thing that I would like to throw out for you all to consider is that if you do this, who's going to enforce it? Okay, the issue right now is I think that we're very short of police officers in order to keep this town with things that are status quo. If you add in somebody calling, a truck just went down my road, the cops got to leave and go down there and check that. I understand what you're getting at, but I think that when you do that consideration, if you would keep that in the back of your minds.
No, absolutely.
Just a suggestion.
But as a truck driver myself, the deterrence of that sign and getting a fine and getting points on my license is enough for me to stop and go, hey, I gotta find another route.
Well, I agree, there's nothing wrong with the idea, I'm just saying.
No, I understand what you're
You
saying.
should consider, you know, this as part of the process when you go through it.
Right.
Yeah, last thing was just a question, anything that we need to do preparing for the election?
not that I'm aware of, but that's the town clerk and the moderator. And as far as I know, they tested ballots today. They tested the machine. Their end of it, they're ready to go.
Okay.
The selectmen need to be there, at least at certain points during the day. Hey, she can answer this question. I'm glad you're still here.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's supposed to be, well, I'm sure Paul knows, 2 selectmen there at think it's 2, right, at any time.
Well, for us
the
it's
rest of the
3
day.
because we're a 5 member.
Yeah, 5, yeah.
Well, I can't be there because I'm running.
Right, you're out.
Well, it's up to you
What
four.
do you do, right?
Take it over.
We'll manage, I think we.
You're gonna stand outside all day, right?
I didn't do that when I had people running against me.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, manifest.
And I'll pass along the signature page on this deed.
I think that's down there.
No, just say,
I know I talked about this before.
make a motion to approve payroll manifest.
Security deposits.
Yeah,
Thank
payroll
you.
number 5.
Yeah.
In the amount.
Yeah.
Let me get this one right. I hereby approve the attached manifest unpaid bills detailed as of March 8, 2018, the amount of $132,142.58.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
I move we approve attached manifest number 1, accounts payable for the ambulance special revenue account in the amount of $3,000.
Second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I make a motion, to manifest number 2, accounts payable fire and safety revolving fund, March 8th, 2018, $123.80.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'll also make a motion to approve payroll manifest number 5 of 2018 in the amount of $52,801.60.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything else to come before this honorable court? Now we'll entertain a motion.
I'm in adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 7:50.
Snow's coming.
Second. Big snow.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you,
Just
gentlemen.
remember